Hello, and at long last, welcome back to the Forgotten Continent. Now, as of this video, it's been about 2 months since the last video, and I feel like I have some explaining to do here. Now, this was a bit of a stupid mistake on my part, but that was to start this series and this project in the weeks leading up to my big second-year university exams. And this has basically meant that over the past 2 months I've been working on this project. It's only been in little sporadic half-hour chunks here and there on my laptop, and because it's not a very powerful rig, I haven't been recording these as well. So I think the word of the day for this video would be sporadic, and that is that progress has been made across the board, and there's a lot that has been done, but a lot of it wasn't recorded, a lot of it was in half-hour chunks. So I thought what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically throw together the time lapses that I have, show you all the work I've done, and then dedicate a large live section portion to show you the pieces that I haven't covered and how to combine all the pieces together. So what we're going to start off today in this time lapse will be on the second section of the Dark Ride, and this is the Isle of the Lotus Eaters. Now, off camera I've worked on the first section, which is a indoor storm section, which features a water coaster helix into a drop, and that brings you to the Isle of the Lotus Eaters. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with what I'm basing it on, this is from Homer's Odyssey, particularly the wanderings of Odysseus, and this island I wanted to capture the mysticism and also the sort of the alluring nature of this island as well, and how its inhabitants try to lure people in. So I started off by building these very small, simple huts. I didn't want it to look very advanced. I wanted it to look very, very simple, and blend it into the terrain and the beautiful flowers that we have here. And while we don't have any lotus flowers in the game, I went for these pink lights that came with a fantasy theme, and I think they look really, really good because they stand out so much within the scene, and make it very, very obvious that these are not your usual kind of flowers. So I wanted to capture a small little village vibe here, and I start off by building these 2 little buildings, the first of which here just using the simple adventure pieces, with some, I think they're World's Fair doors, I'm not quite sure, using those as windows, and getting a couple of those lotus flowers into there. And this whole first section of the ride, I wanted to really have it feeling quite whimsical, quite fantastical, but very much aware of the dangers underlying it. And as we move through this dark ride, I think it will become very, very clear that what is on the surface is not always as it seems. I think that's one thing I've really enjoyed working on this project, is working with source texts as good as Homer's Odyssey, which has basically meant that inspiration for this project has been really easy, because it's given me so many set pieces, ideas and themes to run with, that it all flows very nicely. And while I've been relatively silent on both Discord and on this channel the past couple of weeks, I don't want you to think that the inspiration has dried up at all. In fact, I'm really thoroughly enjoying this project, mainly because it's so out of my comfort zone. I am not a dark ride builder. In fact, I'm not really a ride builder myself. I am a pure scenery kind of person. And while I'm trying to improve on those aspects in particular, sometimes you have to throw yourself into the deep end, that is, of out of your comfort zone. However, that does run you into problems, particularly involving the animatronics. And as you'll see later on in the time, that's when we start working on, well, spoiler alert, the Cyclops section. Cracks start to appear in how much you can build in Planet Coaster, particularly in relation to narrative-driven dark rides as specific as this, because I'm building things that are definitely not in the game, and in fact not many ThemeMaker's toolkit items can support it as well. I think one thing that's been really lacking from Planet Coaster Creations has been purely realistic dark rides, narrative-driven dark rides. I mean, you think back to some of the most brilliant and spectacular dark rides, like the Alien dark ride made by Hinya back in the start of Planet Coaster, and that's got millions and millions of views on it as well. And again, they're not really realistic dark rides in that sense, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. In fact, I think it's incredible to see how much you can push the game, but realistically scaled, kind of pared back theming, like what I'm trying to attempt here, is really, really difficult. And I tried that for the first time with my Dr. Faustus dark ride in Trillium Gardens, which I don't think I've actually shown off yet. So that's one that I built a little while back, and that was my first ever dark ride. So technically this makes this my second ever dark ride, which is a little bit scary actually. even though really it's a water coaster mixed in. I think one of the main issues of building realistically scaled dark rides is just that there isn't enough versatility within small scale animatronics and stuff like that, and that's nothing wrong with Frontier. In fact, something that you would hope the Theme Maker's Toolkit will pull out of it, but I find myself becoming a little bit lazy when it comes to dark rides sometimes, and I'll admit this as just using lighting in ways so that it covers imperfections, and it's only when you look at people like Joshua Amos, for instance, who producing the Haunted Mansion dark ride, and it's just incredible, the level of detail going in, and I don't know if he's actually started on the actual ride itself with the queue and all that, and how that's come out. I am not trying to go for that at all. I'm someone who, if it looks fine, I will run with it, in the case of dark rides, but I think it's something that does show up the sort of the difficulties you run into when trying to really highly tailor your theme. And while you would hope the Theme Maker's Toolkit would fill these things up, it's just they're sometimes too specific. And if I'm looking for a Cyclops from the Odyssey, for instance, it's very unlikely that someone's created that, and believe me, I have looked and there isn't so far. I hope I'm not being overly ambitious, but I'm hoping with a combined soundtrack for this, a custom soundtrack, potentially some use of the background images as well to really capture the story. I really do want this to be a justified good dark ride. I don't actually have any plans for how the other lands will work out in terms of their rides, but this will probably be one of the main dark rides of this very small park, and I'm relatively happy with how it's come out. And as you would have just seen there, we've just finished off building this small temple, and we're building off the skills we built up in episode 3, which was the small temples up on the cliffs, and now we're applying that into the dark ride section, keeping everything very much in scale, and making sure that we can bring out the lighting here. I have no idea how to get daylight lighting, and I was originally aiming to make this scene a daytime scene, but it's just impossible. So I've ended up with this weird sort of mix of purples and oranges, trying to capture this. And here's one of the animatronics here. I'm using a zombie as a Lotus Eater, who will be foraging through the plants. So if you can suspend your disbelief a little bit, I suppose that's a Lotus Eater, and we'll have to run with that. So I'm just going to little whiz around, check all the angles there, make sure everything's lit properly, and we're filling in the little blank segments around the side here. And starting to generate a bit of a rhythm. I had this idea of this first sight line as he came out of the tunnel as well, through to the temple, so I wanted to make sure that that was a clean sight line through both sides of the dark ride. And with the little village of the Lotus Eaters complete, I decided it was time to move on to the next section, which was the encounter with the Cyclops. And yes, that is me attempting to use an alien as a Cyclops, then a mummy, a zombie I think I settled on in the end, but it still doesn't look great. If anyone knows any Theme Maker's Toolkits items that would work for this really well, if you could let me know in the description, that'd be absolutely fantastic, because I am very stuck on this matter. But I wanted to have this scene where you approach this cave, and then you hear footsteps, and then a big growl comes out and a Cyclops emerges. Obviously it's not really as dramatic as that, but I wanted it to feel that dramatic. So set up a small lighting rig here, ensuring that the Cyclops be lit as when I wanted him to appear. And maybe it's some subconscious part of me. I mean, Freud would probably have a right go at this, but the building of the rocks ended up looking like a Cyclops itself, and I didn't really realise this until I was looking back at the footage and back at everything. That, I mean, to be fair, probably the more realistic looking Cyclops is the cave itself, with the jagged eyes and as well, and the teeth below. I don't know. I think it kind of adds to the theme of it, as silly as it does look. So we'll caption off what will be this first section, which is the Isle of the Lotus Eaters, and move towards the second section and the third section, eventually encountering the Sirens. And continuing on in our sporadic journey through time-lapse mayhem, we're back outside the dark ride, and starting to build a small thing ripped straight from Assassin's Creed Odyssey's concept art, and really working with this sort of ruined, rubbled aesthetic as well. One thing someone noticed on Twitter actually in response to this is that how they enjoy how the series isn't a usual Greek theming, and there's loads of colour within the buildings, and that's something I really wanted to bring across because a lot of when you think of traditional classical Greek architecture is very much this sort of white marble columns and everything, but actually there's so much colour and wood used within it, and I think that's really added so much style to this rather than just a generic Greek theme. One problem I am running into with me working little half-hour chunks is that this isn't a purpose-built building. This is a building built for the purpose of just building it. And while I love it and I think it fits perfectly into the park, I actually have no idea what I'm going to use it for. It will have a small courtyard. It's got a little throughput, so it could potentially be an entrance to a ride or a small cafe or entrance to the land even. I'm not even sure. I just wanted to work with details as much as possible. Even using the tiny fireworks is a very powerful tool of creating very small details. The adventure rubble pieces have been absolutely fantastic for creating the sort of worn out look of the walls and giving it a bit more texture to usual blankness, and making sure the scale was just right as well. And while this is the only building outside of the dark ride that I've recorded, I've actually done a massive amount of building in the park, and once I eventually come to the live section I will show you how much that has been built in this style, hopefully with this level of detail as well, because I really want to make sure that the advantage that we have, which is it being a very small park, we can really push the details to extreme levels and not have to worry too much about park count. Luckily I'm not quite running into lag just yet, but we'll definitely run into that eventually, so we've got to bear that in mind. And then we're going to use the classic trick of using brackets to fill in the small roof around the front. I didn't want to build a full custom roof for this because it isn't going to be a major building, so we're going to waste of pieces, but I think it does give that nice sort of textured effect, and I might go back into it and raise some up and lower some others as well. And this is very much here where you can see me working with two monitors and looking at the reference images and coming back, and it gives me a massive amount of direction, be able to know exactly where I'm going with this building, and not just unleashing myself and building straight, because sometimes that takes me into some very weird avenues, and I'd rather stick to what is at least really realistic in a thematic sense, and ensure that we can really get this ruined carved aesthetic looking perfect. But detail work is a slow process, and doing this in little half-hour chunks means that the progress in the park is taking its time, and I'm very much aware that I want this project to be done by the time Planet Zoo comes out. And while I will still religiously be playing Planet Coaster when it comes out, I'm very much aware that people will probably be very interested in Planet Zoo, and I'm very interested myself as well into where that goes. As someone who played a lot of Zoo Tycoon 2 back in the day, had all the expansion packs and everything, I'm very excited about it as well. Not as excited as the prospect of Planet Coaster 2 down the line, but I think we'll take it as it comes. I think Frontier look like they're getting everything right with that game so far. The engine looks almost identical to Planet Coaster, which I think is a good thing, because we've had it's approaching 3 years now to get used to the whole system of this game and the whole way that they want to build things in this game, and I think to overhaul it completely would be a misstep, because otherwise we'd be able to step into it as easy. But I'll still be taking very much my architectural focus, and that's why I'm not too worried about it being about animals and not about roller coasters anymore, because you can still do what is my favourite part of this game, which is the building and the architecture and all that. Pushing forward, I'm going to complete the ruin aesthetic around the side. We'll create the roof over the top and fill it into create a full courtyard here. And I think the rubbled aesthetics add a lot of depth, and that's something we'll definitely have a closer look at when we come into the live section just about now. Now inside the park file itself, we're going to have a little look around the many little things I've been able to work on this week, particularly off camera. So if we're going to cross over the bridge that was here before, nothing's actually changed in this first section. In fact, I'm really happy with how it's come out. You can see creeping on the right hand side here, I've started to incorporate some of N7's fantastic trees, which are a massive addition into the whole Planet Coaster game as well, and there's sometimes a lot more colour to the vegetation around the park. I've got one there, but as I'll show you later on, I have quite a few around. But there's still a fun, unfinished interior for the Poseidon gift shop on this side. But what has changed is when we pass under this bridge. And as you can see, the view is quite spectacular now. It's quite different as well. This is heavily inspired by two things. Firstly, the mythos view in Islands of Adventure, but also the architecture of Journey to Atlantis. I've incorporated the teal and red colour scheme that dominates this land to build a second side to the facade. And I really wanted to combine two very different architectural styles in order to show off that this is a journey through different lands and different approaches. There's no one flavour to the architecture you'll encounter here. A lot of the work this week has actually gone to the transition between the flat ground section and the bridge over to the other side. This layout here is taken straight from Journey to Atlantis and SeaWorld. And if you go around to this side, you can actually see how the little beach goes up onto the side with a reinforced wall there, and that comes up onto the pavement. And I find that's a really nice approach to this. Also new on this side is the new bridge and the new segments around the side. These new fence pieces are taken straight from the Ghostbusters pack, which has been one of the best additions to come to this park. And I think they're really, really simple. It's a really simple design. I don't think it's quite ready, but I find it a lot cleaner to what I had before and fills in a lot nicer on this side. Before we cross the bridge, I wanted to highlight a couple of other things as well. So on the main Greek Odyssey restaurant, there's now a small extension, a particularly ruined extension, and that now features, if you go through these little curtains, a toilet as well, which directly linked into the restaurant. So it double functions as the restaurant's toilet, but also the section's toilet, which is a really nice second entrance to the restaurant itself. On the right hand side, we have a small double story, or two story that is, facade, and this one was very much experimenting again with the ruined aesthetic, the brickwork coming through, and it's very different to the other styles on this side, but it's a nice simple corner building. It doesn't draw too much attention to itself, but it's still detailed. And this is in here using a combination of several doors and the new Ghostbusters firehouse door in there as well. So now to cross the bridge, and I'll take this very slowly. So we have these new custom built lamps on both sides, and a custom sign. I'm not good at signs, this is not my confident point here. But I'll give myself a pat on the back for at least trying with this one. It's just a simple art-shaped sign, but I think it does the job. It really gives a nice sense of the Greek theme here. And if you look around, you really get a sense of the scale and the scope of this dark ride on the inside. There's now a new bridge as well. I decided to add a second bridge to cross over to this section, and that allows you fantastic views of the currently unfinished interior from there as the ride drops beneath you into the water trough and round to that side. On the inside of the temple, there's now a very simple small interior, and if I actually set this to nighttime, you can see that this is a small temple segment with a red and blue continuation on the inside with the ceiling, a custom lamp in the middle, and just some altars on both sides. It's a very simple, nicely themed place, with using the Ghostbusters wall pieces as well on the side to complete it. So the queue at the moment wraps underneath the ride, which actually has a new layout, and I've removed the curved drive tyres that people were complaining about in the last video. It wraps underneath the drop of the ride, it comes round, goes a little cattle pen through this building and out to this side, which goes next to this building, the brand new building you saw in the time lapse, which is currently has no purpose. And as you can see there, I originally had a shop. I was thinking about turning this into a drink shop with tables inside the courtyard, but I don't know if that quite works. I was also thinking about doing a ride entrance with it as well. I kind of worked myself into a hole there by creating this facade without actually thinking of what to do with it. And inside this dark ride now as well, there's two new segments that I can't show off until they're complete, which is the first segment when you come out of the station going up to Lift Hill, and then the start of the storm and the storm section before you drop into what I showed in the time lapse. But again, there's a lot to do, and to cover all this as well, will mean more and more facade work, and I certainly have got a lot to do. And that's just about it. With the transition between the two segments relatively complete now, I think the main thing to do will be to really crack on with the ride itself. I've done a lot of the hard technical work that needs to be done, and now it's a lot more fun stuff to do with the actual dark ride and facades itself. So I hope you've enjoyed my relatively sporadic ramblings and the sporadic time-lapse and the sporadic content I'm putting out here. And now I'm back from university and I can really crack on with this project. I'm really excited to see how far we can push these themes and really complete this Greek section before moving into the rest. So despite it all, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I really look forward to seeing you guys next time.